Babylon was more than a city, it was an idea. Built from mud and ambition on the banks of the Euphrates River, it became a place where myth and reality blurred, where gods were housed in ziggurats and kings carved their laws in stone. For centuries, Babylon was the beating heart of Mesopotamia, the land between rivers where some of humanity's earliest cities rose. It was here that Hammurabi proclaimed one of the world's first codes of law, where trade caravans carried lapis and spices across deserts, where astronomy and mathematics looked skyward for order. Babylon's name became legend. Ancient writers spoke of its tower reaching to heaven and its hanging gardens, a wonder of the world. Even its destruction left echoes. In the Bible, Babylon became a symbol of hubris, exile, and downfall. But Babylon was also real. Streets crowded with markets, walls wide enough for chariots, temples where priests tracked the stars. Its ruins, near modern-day Baghdad, still carry the memory of kings who sought eternity in brick and stone. To understand Babylon is to watch humanity's early experiments with power, knowledge, and belief, how a city of clay grew into a world that still whispers its name. Long before Babylon's towers rose, the land of Mesopotamia was already ancient. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, farmers had been tilling irrigated fields since around 6000 BCE. They built villages of mud brick, worshipped in step temples called ziggurats, and developed the world's first writing, cuneiform pressed into clay tablets. By the 3rd millennium BCE, great cities like Uruk and Lagash dominated the southern plain. Their kings carved laws, waged wars, and built monuments that bound religion and politics into one. This fertile crescent was not just farmland, it was humanity's first urban experiment. Babylon began humbly. Around 2300 BCE, it was a small town under the shadow of larger neighbours, little more than a settlement of canals, fields, and shrines. Its name in Akkadian, Babalu, meant Gate of the Gods. The name was an aspiration before it was reality. Over time, waves of conquerors swept through Mesopotamia. The Akkadians, Sumerians, and Amorites, each leaving their imprint. Babylon absorbed them all. By the early 2nd millennium BCE, it was ready to rise from obscurity. A dynasty of Amorite kings would transform it from a river town into the capital of an empire. And at its head stood a ruler whose laws would echo for millennia, Hammurabi. In the early 18th century BCE, Babylon was still one among many competing city-states of Mesopotamia. Then came Hammurabi, 1792 to 1750 BCE, the 6th king of the Amorite dynasty, who transformed it into the centre of a realm stretching from the Persian Gulf to Assyria. Hammurabi was as much administrator as conqueror. He expanded Babylon's control through war and diplomacy, forging alliances and breaking them as needed. But his most enduring legacy was the Code of Hammurabi, a compilation of laws carved onto a basalt stele nearly 7 feet tall. An eye for an eye, it declared, codifying principles of justice, property, trade, and family life. While not the first law code in history, it became the most famous, a monument to the idea that kings could govern by rule as well as by sword. Under Hammurabi, Babylon became not only a military capital, but a cultural and religious one. The city's patron god, Marduk, rose to supremacy in the Mesopotamian pantheon. His temple, the Asagila, stood as the ritual heart of the city, while the great ziggurat, Etemenanki, loomed as a stairway between earth and heaven. When Hammurabi died, his empire soon fractured under weaker successors. Babylon fell to invaders, the Hittites, then the Kassites, but its prestige endured. The memory of Hammurabi's laws, his ordered realm, and his city of Marduk ensured Babylon would never again be just another town on the river. The name itself was beginning to carry power, and centuries later, it would rise again, greater than ever under kings who dreamed of empire, carved in brick. By the 7th century BCE, Babylon had weathered centuries of foreign rule: Assyrians, Elamites, Arameans. Then the city surged back under the Neo-Babylonian dynasty. In 626 BCE, Nabopolassar threw off Assyrian control and made Babylon independent. His son Nebuchadnezzar II, r. 605 to 562 BCE, raised it to dazzling heights. Nebuchadnezzar expanded Babylon into the largest city of its age, defended by walls so massive, double and triple layers, that ancient writers claimed chariots could race along the tops. Inside, the city spread in ordered avenues and canals, crowned by towering ziggurats and glittering temples. The most legendary marvel was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, said to have been built for Nebuchadnezzar's queen, who longed for her mountain homeland. Terraced with trees and flowing with artificial rivers, they were remembered as one of the 7 wonders of the world, though their existence remains debated. Religion infused the city. The god Marduk reigned supreme, honoured at the Esagila temple and the towering Etemenanki ziggurat, a structure some later linked to the biblical Tower of Babel. Babylon was also an imperial capital. Nebuchadnezzar campaigned from the Levant to Egypt, famously destroying Jerusalem in 587 BCE and exiling its elite population to Babylon, a trauma remembered in biblical psalms and prophecies. For others, Babylon was a beacon of learning. Priests tracked the heavens, refining astronomy and mathematics that shaped calendars and eclipses. At its height, Babylon was both fortress and jewel, a city of myth and power, where the Euphrates shimmered against walls painted with lions and dragons. But empires glitter, then dim. Within a generation, Babylon's golden age would give way to conquest, and the city that once defined the world would soon fall to a new power from the east, Persia. In 539 BCE, Babylon's golden walls could not save it. Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Achaemenid Empire, marched on the city. Ancient accounts say the Persians diverted the Euphrates, slipping under Babylon's defences while its people celebrated a festival. Babylon fell without a major battle. Under Persian rule, Babylon remained important, a royal city where Cyrus proclaimed tolerance and allowed exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their homelands. But its independence was gone. 2 centuries later, in 331 BCE, Alexander the Great entered Babylon in triumph after defeating the Persians. He envisioned it as the capital of his new empire, even planning to rebuild its ziggurat. But in 323 BCE, Alexander died in Babylon, leaving his empire to fracture among his generals. The city lingered under Seleucid, then Parthian rule, but its power bled away. Trade routes shifted, canals silted, and monuments fell into disrepair. By the 1st centuries CE, Babylon was largely abandoned, its bricks carted off to build new towns. In memory, however, it endured. For the Greeks, it was a place of wonder. For biblical writers, it was a symbol of arrogance and exile. For later empires, it was a cautionary tale of power undone. The gate of the gods had fallen, but its name would never vanish. Babylon remembered. Even as its streets emptied, Babylon lived on in the imagination. For the peoples it once ruled, the city became a symbol. For the exiled Jews, it was both prison and paradox, remembered in psalms of mourning by the rivers of Babylon. In later Christian tradition, it became shorthand for sin, pride, and corruption, a cautionary city whose fall was divine judgment. For classical writers, Babylon was a marvel. Herodotus described its vast walls and strange customs. Later geographers copied his tales, exaggerating its size until it became a city of legend. The Hanging Gardens, whether real or myth, cemented its place as a wonder of the world. Through the Islamic Golden Age, scholars preserved fragments of Babylonian science, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, long after its temples had crumbled. The zodiac, the 360-degree circle, and the sexagesimal system of time all trace back to Babylon's scribes. By the 19th century, European explorers and archaeologists returned to Mesopotamia with spades and ambition. Excavations uncovered the Ishtar Gate, its glazed blue bricks decorated with lions and dragons, now reassembled in Berlin's Pergamon Museum. Cuneiform tablets, once clay ledgers and prayers, revealed a world of bureaucracy, myth, and science. In modern times, Babylon became entangled again in politics. Saddam Hussein attempted to reconstruct parts of the city in the 1980s, stamping his name on its bricks as Nebuchadnezzar once had. More recently, war and neglect have scarred the ruins, even as UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site in 2019. Though its towers are gone, Babylon continues to reinvent itself, not as a living city, but as a cultural symbol, a mirror for human ambition and memory. Modern Babylon lies in ruins near Hilla, Iraq, its mud brick foundations cracked under desert sun, its reconstructed walls echoing more with tourists than priests. Yet the city endures, not as a capital, but as a palimpsest where ancient glory, modern politics, and cultural pride collide. The Ishtar Gate, rebuilt in part on site and in full in Berlin, still glows with cobalt tiles and striding lions, a reminder of Babylon's former majesty. Cuneiform tablets continue to surface, reshaping our knowledge of law, astronomy, and myth. Scholars trace the roots of Western timekeeping, mathematics, and even biblical narrative back to these fragments of clay. But Babylon's modern history is tangled. In the 20th century, Saddam Hussein sought to link his rule with Nebuchadnezzar's, rebuilding palaces atop ancient foundations, inscribing his own name on new bricks. During the Iraq War, US and coalition forces built a military base on the site, causing further damage to fragile ruins. Today, Babylon is both a tourist attraction and a national symbol for Iraq, a reminder that this land was once the centre of the world. Farmers till fields around the ruins, children play near the crumbled walls, and the Euphrates still slides quietly past. Babylon no longer rules, but it remains, a ruin reborn in scholarship, myth, and the pride of a nation reconnecting with its deep past.